Hi, my name is Carolyn Striho, and I'll be reading today from my book, Detroit, Maiden Energy, Street Princess Poems and Lyrics. It's kind of a volume one. I have a lot more poetry and lyrics I wanted to include, and hopefully in the next book, and songs, because I'm a songwriter as well. Back in the garden. Back in the garden, rhubarbs and berries. This is the city, Detroit beauty nobody knows. All of the trees, all of the forest is my magic believed. The kids, they came over. They played in the attic. We had found four-leaf clovers, folded the hope, and put in the Bible of autumn leaves like a revival. I fell down the stairs and rolled my head to the hardwood floor until I saw red. Back in those days, life was a haze of sun-ripened tomatoes and skinned knees. I always hit the hardest. I always cried the hardest. 6 years old in my aunt's funeral in an old Plymouth car. How do you get here? How do you start when your world is so thick and your mind is so smart? Where did you go and how did you get there when your northern spirit keeps pushing along? Sand dune summers. Ice-cold winters, music we heard, and voices yelling loud, languages and spoke to understand, when your heart is going faster than your body ever can. How did you get there? How did you start when northern spirit keeps pushing along, behind the garages, run over fences, ivy on the brick, the beautiful city, running so hard, exciting streets with my bike hitting, concrete summer hit, and heat. Back in the garden, rhubarb and berries. This is the city of Detroit beauty. Nobody knows all of the trees. All of the forest is my magic believed. Thank you.
Welcome back to the 2020 Virtual Authors Fair. It's our second annual, held through the Rochester Hills Public Library in conjunction with Rochester Writers and for Rochester Writers. My name is Michael Dwyer. I'm pleased to be here and introducing our next author. Her name is Carolyn Striho. Did I get that right, Carolyn?
You did, yep. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Carolyn, for joining us. And you're a poet, a songwriter, a musician, and now an author. You came out with this book just about a year ago. It's called, as I look at my other screen here, Detroit Maiden Energy Street Princess Poems and Lyrics. Are you the street princess?
Well, maybe. But when I wrote that poem, and it's actually in the book, I had thoughts about what I saw, in the city, and some things came up with that. And so I put it into a poem. It's kind of, could be the story itself. And it was almost the title. It was in the running for the title, just Street Princess. And Maiden Energy is one of my songs I had. That's a poem in here too. So I like the idea of the energy too. So and the maiden, like a maiden girl. So it became Maiden Energy, but.
So this is a collection of poems and lyrics and what kind of time frame do they cover? When was the?
That's a good question. Well, I think the first one's, oh my gosh, I'll be dating myself, but way long ago, probably the 80s, even maybe a little before. There are a couple things that relate when I was really young, so I was writing already. Some music things here that probably about 79 or 80.
So did you start writing poems that became songs, or were you writing songs and they were very poetic?
Both kind of. I mean, when I was a kid, and I was little in Detroit, I loved to write, and I started to keep a diary. And in the diary was everything going on, talking about what we were doing and everything like that. But there were poems too. I was really super shy. A lot of musicians and writers are that way. And so I think it was a way of being able to explain things for me to write, especially with poetry.
And so you were a musician or performer from an early age?
Right. So the thing with my poems and lyrics, like back to your last question, I'm mixing them up a bit, but sometimes the poems became a song. They just, parts of them I'd pull out. Other times the song was part of a poem. And when I was young, again, discovering that I could perform and do these things, that kind of was my way to communicate, I think. It was easier for me as a performer. I love to be on stage. So, first I was shy, but it didn't last long. So I really loved being out there on stage.
And tell us about your music. How would you describe it?
It's a blend of a lot of things. I would say that is not a genre in a way, but yet there's a lot of rock and roll. There's some jazz, there's some folk, there's some punk rock, there's some classical, because I had played classical piano so long, and kind of a flamenco, kind of gypsy blues.
And when you perform, is it typically solo, or do you have a whole band? What will people see if they come see you?
Well, I traditionally had a whole band, and with everything going on now, my guitarist, my husband, plays with me too. So I have a full band when things are going well, and sometimes it's narrowed down to maybe a 3-piece, and right now it's a 2-piece. So if you came to a gig, like we did the tree lighting last year in downtown Detroit, there were 4 of us. All right, usually it's 4 to 5 on a bigger show, but now it's 2. So yeah, it's online.
Well, I have a lot of friends that are musicians, and I certainly understand that um, i- the age of big rock and roll bars with full bands are not really there anymore. But you have that capability. You know enough musicians. You have a complete ensemble, so to speak. But based on budget and venue and location, it sounds like you can do anything that needs to be done musically.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. We went to England again a couple years ago as a duo, and I played Italy several times as a trio. It just depends on you said that was well said, because over here a lot of times a lot of shows are bigger, where you can bring in more people, but when you're traveling and leaving on a jet plane, sometimes it's easier to have less people.
Absolutely. So you've been writing and performing and writing poetry and songs, and this is collected over the years. And I imagine that's how you got the idea that it was time for a book.
Yeah, and thank you, Michael. People have been talking about, you should have this book out. And there was some talk about like a rock and roll or Detroit kind of memoir of a musician, a girl in Detroit who had done music so long, and stuff I saw, and so many well-known people and different people we had played with, and adventures. There's a lot of adventures. But that's a memoir is a lot of work. It's so much stuff. I've been writing and writing. So I thought, as I was writing it, I started thinking, well, why don't I do my poems? I talked to some people. And then it kind of came together. I had met Heather Buchanan from Aquarius Press, and she said, let's do it. So I got on it. I got it organized. So the rest is history.
So I'm assuming you've been doing this for a long year. You have a fan base, you have followers. Um, are they going to find a treat going through this book of songs that maybe you don't perform anymore, or they remember it from 20 years ago?
There are some in there like that. You're right. There's stuff in there that if a true fan would find and say, wow, and some people have found some songs. Interesting that you said that. Um, that's right. They would. So there's a following, I think when you play a lot of shows or you release music at CDs and albums after so many years, people do tend to say, what are you going to do next? So they're looking for it.
And it sounds like you've got so much material that you may need to do another book.
I do. And it's weird because I wanted to have photos and I wanted to do this whole, it's going to look like this. And well, that's a lot more. So I decided, well, it might be better to wait. Although I didn't know I had so much more till I started really looking. And I thought, wow, I didn't get that one in there. And then I had like a couple stacks. There's like, Michael, I'm telling you, there's a lot. So I'd be writing. Yeah.
And besides your fans reminiscing with an older lyrics set of lyrics that they may remember, have you come across something and said, oh my gosh, why don't I perform this anymore?
Yeah, it's funny you said that. There's some in here that I want to do again. So, and even maybe go back in the studio and do them over, not, you gave me a lot of ideas because they were already in my head. When you just said that, I thought, yep, you're right, because I'm working on new material, of course. I've got new songs I'm working on in the studio, but it's like some of these, they never saw the light of the day, or I really liked doing a couple. I could name some of them in here, Out in the Streets. That was a band favorite, that was like everybody just, it just took on its own little movie, that song. And I haven't done that in years. So it's one of them.
Well, if you pick up an instrument and play, what's your go-to?
It's simple to pick up a guitar. I have one in the background here somewhere, but it's pretty easy, but I feel to myself, I'm better on piano. So with piano, if I sit down at piano, it's just simple. I can make things up as I go, kind of. I could do that with guitar, but I'm not like one of those lead guitarists. It's rhythm. Heavy rhythm is my favorite to play on guitar.
Well, I think that's common for most musicians to go to the keyboards when they're writing.
And that's where I first wrote. Perfect. Yep. I first wrote on keyboards. And I had these great guitar players that played with me that taught me a lot of guitar. And I thought, it was weird because I started to write on guitar then, and the songs were totally different, which was really fun because it made it a new adventure. It's same thing if you change a beat to a song, or just change a beat when you're writing, you come up with new stuff. Same with an instrument, pick up something else and it changes everything again. It's inspiring, kind of.
Yeah, it's like giving a new life to a piece that's already been out there, or taking it to its next level.
Exactly. Yeah.
Walk us through your creative process when you come up with a new song. Is it lyrics floating around in your head, or is it a melody, a little bit of both? Well, how does it start and how does it finish?
Yeah, and that's a good question because lately it's been more the melody, whereas before, sometimes I didn't have that melody till I saw the lyrics, sat down and consciously started to work on it. I would create the melody then. But there's some subconscious thing. I think a lot of musicians, I don't know how to explain it really, but there's something you hear. And so maybe that is the melody that I didn't know all this time I was kind of doing that. But
Okay.
yeah, it's kind of odd and it's hard to explain at times because sometimes it just happens where, you hear something and you have to get it recorded. But years ago, you just wrote it down and tried to remember it. Or you better do something quickly or you'll forget it. And so that's interesting because we didn't have, our phones. And, I'm just going to sing it into here. Or I'm going to run and play piano and figure it out later. So you had to be, I'd fall in love with that part or something like that. I'd be so excited. Then I would complete it. And so I'd write down every little thing to remember, like the notes even. It's kind of weird. So it's a little different now.
It is, and it's the blessing and the curse of technology as we're experiencing right here. It's been a big help and a blessing, but sometimes you get tired of it and it's frustrating. And so I can imagine for musicians, it's the same way. where is the place that you want to send people to find out more about your music or maybe to pick up a copy of your book? I bet there's one great place to send them all.
All right. Well, I mean, I have my website, but a lot of people will actually, they will email me or like they'll PayPal me or something like that. So I'm trying to think of the best way for people to, if they want to get music and books both, really, we can't go to bookstores really right now because the book is in bookstores. And I don't like to promote the big people like Amazon, but it is on Amazon. It's also on Google Play. Spotify, the music's on Spotify. That's a popular, where you can hear it on there. But to buy it, I would suggest you write to me and I will send you a copy if I have any left. So that's the thing. I mean, then you get the writer or the musician, it's better for them, but I would say whatever's easy for the buyer, if it's easier for them to go on Amazon and look up my name, they'll find the book and music. They'll find the Kindle, the hard copy, and now the audio version, which is going to be on Audible pretty soon, which is kind of sweet. And I narrated it, so I did so many poems. I mean, I couldn't do all of them, a couple are sang, okay? But yeah, and definitely my website, because then you can go right into places where you can buy the book. And my name, if you put in PayPal me, Carolyn Striho 1. Okay, so PayPal, I think it's .me, Carolyn Striho 1. I can mail you out a copy. I just got a new shipment because I had sold out of the books, so that's good news. And
But it sounds like listeners will have lots of places and ways to get a hold of you and to get a copy of the book. Again, I'm looking at my screen. It says Detroit Maiden Energy, Street Princess, Poems and Lyrics. It's a new book. Well, it's been out about a year, but it's a book out by musician and songwriter Carolyn Striho. Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us for the Author Fair. It's fun to have a musician, a poet, and a author on today for the Authors Fair. Thank you so much, and we'll be back in a moment with another author.
thank you, Michael, so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.